Welcome friends and awesome people. My name is Mike and in this video I will show you how to integrate the settings menu with your project. Roll the intro. First I will show you how to add settings menu to your project. Next I will show you how to add new project to settings menu. And finally, I will talk a little about settings menu enhanced input, and we will simply customize key binding section. First, I will create a new first-person shooter project to which we will add settings menu. Let's enable enhance input plugin. Also, if you are using platform functions plugin to extra settings, you can enable it too now. And now we need to set up default input classes in project settings. Let's go to project settings, input, and in default classes we need to change them to enhance input one. Okay. Once that is done, we are ready to migrate settings menu into this project. Let's open the settings menu project now. Now right click on the settings menu content folder and select migrate. Check that everything is checked. Press OK. Now select your project content folder and select folder. Okay, migration complete successfully. Now we go back to first person project. Okay, in the content folder we can see settings menu. Now we are ready to add settings menu to this project. Let's see how this project handle input. Select first person game mode in blueprints folder. We can see that it uses the default player controller, but custom pawn. We can add settings menu components to player controller or pawn that you created. In that case, we will add it to custom pawn class. Let's open it now. To set up settings menu, we will add two components. First is dynamic controller detection, and second one is settings menu. Those components will initialize and enable settings menu properly. Now to be able to open the settings menu, we will handle main menu input action from settings menu. But before that, let's add any key event to the dynamic controller detection system. Select Get Dynamic Control Detection from BPF Settings menu. And select Check any key node. Okay, now we will handle main menu, select Enhance Input Action, EA, Main Menu, General. In Main Menu Input Action, we will create WBP settings and add it to Viewport. If you don't want to create it each time, you can store it as a variable for future use. Okay, let's check if it works, but before that, make sure that you don't have binded the same key anywhere else. And let's open Project Settings, let's go to Input, and make sure that in Actions Mapping, you don't bind the OK. Now we are ready to play the game. Press O to open Settings menu. Okay, everything seems to work fine. Let's handle the jump event as one more example. First, let's delete old jump mappings in Input. We will use the one from Settings menu. Let's select EA Jump Exploration. Let's copy original nodes. And we can delete the old one. Let's compile, save. Let's play. Okay, let's open the settings menu and see which game we are bounded. Okay, it's right mouse click. So right mouse button is jumping now. Okay, that sums up adding settings menu into your project. Next, I will show you how to add new project to the settings menu project. The steps are very similar. First, let's create new first-person project. Okay, now we will migrate your project content into settings menu project. Okay, select settings menu content folder, and let's open settings menu project. Okay, your project has been migrated successfully into settings menu project. Now you can use settings menu player controller or use your own player controller on pawn in your own game mode. We will use a game mode provided by first person shooter, and we will open new level with it. Okay, so first let's open settings menu, main menu widget in core, user interfaces, WBP main menu. Select new game button and let's edit on clicked event. In new game we want to open level, in level name write your level name. We will use first person level, so let's copy this name and let's add it to level name. And now to use your own game mode with your own player controller or pawn or both, we will need to add game option. To do this, we will copy game mode reference. Right click on game mode you want to use with this level and select copy reference. Now let's paste it in the options. Let's remove apostrophe and add underscore capital C. And let's remove blueprint and apostrophe and add question mark game equals. This is the proper format to open new level with your game mode. Okay, and default input mode when you close settings menu is game mode only. You might want to, in your level at the beginning, select the game input mode for your game. We will select input mode game only. And also we will hide the mouse. If you created your custom input mapping context, you might want to add them or clear all the existing mapping context and add the ones you want here. Okay, now we will go and edit the pawn class that is used by this game mode. And the steps are similar as we did before. Let's add two components: dynamic control detection and settings menu. Okay, let's handle and pass any key event to dynamic controller detection. Check any key. Let's handle main menu event from general input mapping context. Excuse me. We want to select event. Okay, on complete, let's create widget. Select WP settings and add to viewport. Okay, let's compile and save, and we are ready to play test it. First, let's go to settings and to key bindings. If you don't see any key bindings, it is probably because this project is the new one and you don't have input mapping context saved to save slot. What you need to do is to press default. Now all input mapping contexts are saved to save slot and we are ready to use them. Let's quit and play again, just to make sure that everything is set. Okay, now let's play the new game. Let's press O to open settings menu, and everything is working. Okay, that sums up adding your project into settings menu project. Okay, at this point you probably want to remove all old input mappings from project settings input and use the enhanced input one. Let's remove all input mappings. And let's see which input actions and input mapping context settings menu provide. Let's go to inputs, and here we can see all provided input mapping context. For example, the general one that we use input action main menu to open settings menu. These key bindings are add to input mapping context automatically by settings menu. So you don't need to worry about key bindings, you only need to provide input mapping context and input actions that you want to use. You can read more about enhanced input in official Unreal Engine documentation. And if you want to remove some input mapping context or add your own, you can add them here, and you will need to add them to input mapping context array that settings menu is using. Let's add a new input mapping context. Let's name it IMC underscore medieval. Let's create new folder, medieval, and let's create new input action for this input mapping context. You can copy the one provided and rename it, or change it, or create a new one. Input action, fire crossbow. Okay, let's save. We don't need to set anything here unless we want to. Now let's add the new input mapping context and new input action to new key binding. First, let's add new input mapping context to settings menu input mapping context array. Let's go to engine. Let's open settings menu component. And here we have input mapping context array. Currently we can see that we are using 5 input mapping context. We can add our new one. Okay, let's select medieval input mapping context that we just created. Let's compile and save. Now let's open WBP settings. Let's go to key binding section. Let's remove some key bindings that we don't need. For example, swimming and maybe driving. Let's hide key bindings that are for settings menu. And to exploration section, let's add new key binding panel. Okay, first let's name it fire crossbow. Next, select input action that we created, fire crossbow, and select medieval input mapping context that we want to use. Let's set default primary key to space bar and default secondary key to some gamepad button, but I don't have any connected right now, so I will set it to M. Let's compile and save. Okay, now let's handle this new event we created in our pawn class. So let's add fire crossbow event, and on complete we can print string fire crossbow Okay, let's compile and save. This warning is because we removed all input mappings and we should redone them in new enhanced input system. Let's play test it, but before that In our Pawn blueprint, we'll add our new input mapping context in on begin play event. Let's get player controller, get enhance input system. Add mapping context. Let's select our medieval input mapping context and let's change its priority to something higher. Let's compile and save here and we are ready to play test it. Let's go to settings, key bindings. Okay, now when we press spacebar, we fire crossbow. That sums up settings menu integration video, where you saw how easy it is to integrate settings menu with your project.